Welcome to Cycles TV. This session of the Market Cycles Report is intended exclusively to provide information and education to help individuals better understand cycles and the markets. However, this information is not to be construed as professional advice as to the buying and selling of securities. In no event does the host express any opinion with respect to, or make recommendations regarding, the purchase or sale of any particular investment instrument. There is a very high degree of risk involved in trading. Buying or selling decisions are solely within the personal discretion of each individual. And now, enjoy the show. Here is your host.
Welcome to the Foundation for the Study of Cycles. My name is Lars Fontin. I'm happy to have you here again. We have Monday, we have Cycles TV, we are live. So I'm here. I will take a look at your comments and questions today in the chat section. So feel free to join the chat and then latest at the end, I will have a review of that. Today on the agenda, as this has been requested a lot of times by our community, I will have a look at energy assets. And in specific, we will have a look at oil, weekly, daily, natural gas on the futures contracts to see if we can identify some interesting cycles there. Upfront, I'm no expert at all in the energy markets, so I'm purely looking on dynamic cycles today without any further frame conditions which might impact the energy markets. I mean, we all know that we have a very heavy one-time impact today, or not today, from the last year, impacting all the energy supply in the global regions, but I will not take this into account. Pure cycle analysis, not more, not less. Right, so let's jump into it. By the way, I see your questions. We will use our application we have as members at the Foundation for the Study of Cycles. You have access to as members. It's working. I will use it live today during the session. So Elliot, I see your question. So everything is up and running. So without further ado, let's jump into it. Let's go into the energy cycles for today. Let's start with what I've loaded here is the natural gas contract using this ID here. So you can also open the data set by using this ID as shown here on the chart, so that you can repeat it. That's the same symbol which would be used by Yahoo Finance. That's the first recommendation. If you want to look up different symbols here, you're not limited to what the cycle analyzer shows us. You can use any symbol ID similar to what Yahoo Finance is showing, and the -W here just added to ensure we get weekly data. So, but let's first disable the cycle we see here. Just as an example, I have been moving to January 2022, before the Russian war took place, and we saw the big peak here in the natural gas contract here. So at this point in time, we have not been aware of this one-time impact. And often I start with an analysis leaving out the current past, to see if cycles would have been any useful using the current past. This gives me kind of feeling about what the cycles looked before. So the light blue data here is not taken into account for this cycle analysis. That's just important to take in mind if you just monitor this. And I will update this just in a second to the current data. And we see here down below, that's the spectrum using this current data set here. So this is also a good example because we're seeing a more complex spectrum here. And therefore said it's not as easy to pick a specific cycle here if you see this kind of spectrum. And why? Because we have different peaks here in the spectrum and lots of peaks here. So it's not simple as that to see one specific cycle here. You see we have this combination of different possible cycles here. So the basic procedure is look for the highest peaks in the spectrum and then start with the longest cycle first. So you go to the upper right of the spectrum here. This axis represents the length, and then this is the amplitude. So by just looking at the spectrum, these 3 cycles here, or these 3 peaks, which you can see in the spectrum, seem to look like some cycles which we could take into account. Yeah, 1, 2, 3. Why? Because these are the longest here in terms of length. So I think you can read the length from the x-axis here. And from the amplitude, they are the most prominent in regards to amplitude, and their peak is okay. So if you look to the left and the right, they are separated in the spectrum. So this is more or less the best separated cycle here to the left and to the right. The issue with these 2 cycles here might be that it's not falling down enough in between. So normally you would see a better drop down to the bottom before the next peak shows up in the spectrum. So this could be questioned here. So not sure if these cycles are valid, but this is 1, 2, maybe 3. And then, I mean, afterwards you could look at these ones here, but here you have a group of very close related cycles. So it's to be honest, you won't be able to pick a specific cycle between these ones here. So these 3 are clearly the ones to go. Let's start with the longest one here by just clicking on the cycle here. Oops, I need to stop this here, which gives us a cycle length of 249 weeks. Longest cycle we can find in this data set. Then let's zoom in a little bit to see how this is aligned with past major tops and bottoms in the market. We can see that it's good aligned in terms of past major tops and bottoms. So we see this top here, this low. I mean, this top here is then here, but here we have a low, here a top, here a low. So if you want to have this as a zigzag plot, I mean, you just connect the tops and bottoms, and you see this is the swing which in the past behavior is aligned to the rhythm of natural gas in the past. And I mean, this is the point in time we are looking for. So at this point in time, January 2022, we would close to be peaking, just some time to go in weeks, and then we would have expected a huge drop. As said, everything here before the Russian aggression war started. So, and by that we saw the peak then exactly in the projected area here. Here, I mean, even peaking at the projected point here. So at the high point where we have been very unsure situation about how we progress with energy supply in the global situation, the cycles already showed us before this aggression even started that this could be a prominent top here with then moving down afterwards. So just to see how this cycle in the energy classes would have been able to predict us the possible top here in what's the time here? So August 2022. So based on this cycle here, and then you could stack up these other 2 cycles here to build a composite based on these 3 cycles in total, which gives you a little bit clearer picture or more streamlined picture of the tops and bottom. But this would have not be changed it totally, so this would have moved the expected top more to the left, and then showing a first low here, which we're close to approaching now. But I mean, this analysis is over a year old, so we now need to update the data because the top rolled in. So the top was seen in this composite here, but now we are more interested in the current behavior. So therefore, I will for sure update the data set to the current data. So now all current data is taken into account. We are still looking at natural gas weekly data. Let's check the spectrum here. Again, we have these 3 cycles might look similar to what we have seen a year ago. That's also interesting that you have understanding about the past behavior and past cycles which have shown up a year ago. So you have a kind of feeling what rhythm and what cycles have already been able to detect in this kind of market here. So therefore we again have a long-term cycle which has a length of, let's have a close look here, of 252 weeks. Yeah, and you might remember a year ago this cycle length was about 249. So this cycle is still there, even more prominent here. If you see how nicely this goes down to the bottom here, nicely separated. And we have one in between, and here is a shorter term one at 148 weeks. Yeah, I think these are the two cycles which we could take into account. So let's again start with the longest cycle here. Again, this is the similar cycle we have already seen a year ago. It's slightly shifted in regards to the phase, and the length has also shifted from 249 now to 200, where are we? 252. And that's important because it gives us a first indication about the long-term perspective. Yeah, this is what we always want to see here first. So the long-term perspective shows us that this long-term cycle has just rolled over to the downside. So there's a long way to go until this long-term cycle in natural gas will bottom out. And you know, I've shown you that the same cycle was visible before the war started. Yeah. So this is not just induced by the one-time impact we've seen. The same cycle was already there before we had seen the shortage on the global markets, or at least here in Europe on the gas supply. So confirmation, this long-term cycle is still there. The top, which has been projected a year ago, still there in the long-term cycle, but from a timing perspective, this low now has room to go into early 2025. So this and the next year is taking part of a more negative cyclic situation for natural gas. I mean, we have gone down a lot here, but you know that cycles do not give us any indication about absolute price targets. They give us information about timing. So we could now fine-tune by adding this second cycle here into the mix to see what the general outlook would impact. But at least even adding this cycle to the mix would still indicate that there's no change expected on the long-term cycle until early 2024. So even if you put this shorter term cycle into the mix of this composite, the negative cyclic timing information will continue the whole year into next year. Yeah. So, and that's the long-term cycle we need to take into account from natural gas. So now let's move over to another asset. So let's see if we can see a different or a similar perspective if we use oil as a second asset in this class. So now this is the oil futures contract, starting with the weekly again here too. Just for fun, I will start again here. This is February, early February. So again, before the war started here, using oil prices. This latest data is not taken into account for the cyclic analysis. And here we can see three possible peaks in the spectrum. I mean, this is, it's a very flat plateau here. So these two are more the ones to go with from a long-term perspective, which result in this composite view here, which from a short-term perspective is nicely projecting the low perspective here. This is now indicating an upswing into 2024, but we need to check how the picture will change if we add this long-term cycle here. So it's more or less the same, besides the fact that you see how this cycle continues here, that the more downward projection is also coming here into the year of 2024. So we still have some upward potential in oil. So we have not exactly the same cycles between natural gas and oil, which makes the overall picture not as easy as possible. But maybe to get additional clues, we now need to move to the daily charts. So therefore, let's do the same analysis and add in a more detailed time frame, switching to daily cycles. So first, instead of gas, so for this is natural gas, long-term perspective. Here we still, at least for the whole year, there's no upside potential then, maybe in the year of 2022. And maybe this might be now the interesting situation. So you see the shape of this composite might seem to look, similar to between oil and gas. Maybe you need to invest a little bit more time here, and I will show you why. This is natural gas. It shows you this upward cycle, but just a smaller one from starting 2024 into the whole 2024. While in oil, you see similar one, but starting more early. But for oil we need to update with the latest data. Sorry, I have not taken this into account. So if we want to have a reliable forecast, this projection a year ago helped us to project the top and moving low here. So it was spot on a year ago. So now let's update the data with latest information. So I will now put this into account. And now we need to revisit the cycles. So while they helped us spotting a low here, or at least the top, and moving down into the current situation, this is now the spectrum with latest data. And in this case, it has slightly changed. So the most prominent cycle, long-term weekly cycle, is now 256 weeks in the oil weekly. Adding this to the chart here now. And now we see, and that's, you can see now how the cycle phases changed from a year ago to now, while the overall length around 250 weeks has not changed. We have seen this cycle a year ago. We see still this cycle length valid today. However, the phase, so when the expected top and low should come, has shifted. So now we see that with latest data, the oil long-term cycle is also projecting a downward move, which has just started into 2025. So now, and I need to excuse, I made a little wrong information some minutes ago because I have not updated the oil data. This is now updated oil data, which is giving a long-term cycle low indication into 2025. And this is now exactly in alignment with the long-term cycles we see on natural gas. So that's now very interesting. And this is clearly the most prominent cycle here in regards from the amplitude and the length. But as said, we could add the 2 or 3 top cycles into the mix, which from the historical perspective is nicely tracking the overall change in trends in the oil contract. And now we still see October, November this year, so the downward cyclic situation, taking all 3 dominant cycles in oil weekly into account, will continue into end of this year. So then we might see a change in trend here for the year of 2024. And now it's interesting if you compare these weekly analysis, oil still downward momentum into end of 2023, then 2024, slightly upward momentum. Now looking at gas, downward cycle going into end of this year, and then 2024, upward momentum. So now the weekly cycles with latest data really show the same outlook. This year negative, next year positive. By the way, same cycle length using weekly data. Now, as we have the long-term projection, let's move into the daily analysis of the same assets. So starting with natural gas, this is current daily data. Last Friday, so we have the huge drop here. We know from the long-term cycles, we still have room until the end of this year for the downward cycle to complete. So that's the long-term perspective we need to take into account. And looking at the spectrum here for natural gas daily cycles, we can identify 2 peaks in the spectrum. It's clearly visible, so I think you would do the same as I would do. No special reason. So this is the long-term daily trading days cycle here. I will pick this one first. Also nicely aligned with the past swings or changes in trend here in natural gas. Also aligned with the major top. While this cycle here now is looking for a current upswing into June. And that's now the interesting point. Then from June, again, the downward phase of this daily cycle comes into play. So from now into summer, the natural gas prices, at least from this daily cycle, will see some upward cyclic pressure. But as we always looking for cycles within cycles, the more interesting point in time will come in June, here highlighted 14th of June this year, when the daily cycle will come in sync with the weekly cycle again. So maybe we will see another major top in the natural gas prices this summer. We can then add also this second cycle here to see if there's a huge change. But this shows us a similar picture. So we arrived at the major bottoming area here, daily, not weekly, which then extends the possible top into July, and then expecting a huge drop. So June, July, if you use both of these dominant cycles, you will have July. If you just use the most dominant cycle, it will become June. So natural gas from now into summer, we have an upward cycle, long-term cycle still pointing down. So after June, July, both cycles moving down again. Now checking the oil daily cycles here. Let's start with the oil prices from today. This is the daily analysis of the oil prices futures contract. And this start with the longest cycle first, which is projecting bottoming area, which has arrived end of last year. So we are still in this bottoming window here and projecting an upswing into May. But here also take into account the longer term weekly cycle has topped end of last year. So the long-term cycle in oil still pointing down for the whole year. So even this upward cycle here could lead us into a sideways move here. So if the price just moves sideways for the next month, so maybe just like this blue line here, this is an alignment between the longer term cycle will pull everything down, which the shorter term upward cycle will just add up and make it just a flat line, adding both cycles on top of each other. So you might have some volatility, and then after June, we might see the next larger downswing. So I would be careful with any upward price speculation because of the longer term cycle still pointing down. And we could add also now the shorter term cycle into the mix to see if there's I need to be careful here, any change. But you see here a similar picture like we've seen in the gas prices daily. So maybe the top is shifted. Yeah, it's also June. So as said, natural gas prices and oil prices show us more or less the same picture. Weekly moving still down for the whole year. Daily upswing into the summer, then moving downwards again. That's for at least that's then at the end a clear picture for energy assets. I mean, you now should add more maybe the sector into account, but the way how you apply the cycle analysis is more or less the same, and I think it should give you a clear picture about what to expect in the energy assets regarding cycles. So let's look out for summer when we expect a major important top to appear, and you need to drill down to your technical price chart to fine-tune now with indicators your trigger or your entry or exit signals. within the cyclic information. The cyclic information gives you an idea about timing. I mean, for trading, you need to take into account your individual risk and decision-making procedures. So that's it for the main purpose of today's session, update on energy cycles. So now I will take some time to visit your questions. So therefore, give me a second to just browse to the chart section. And as I've promised, Charles, we had a discussion in the beginning of this session, so you joined the live chat just on time. So therefore, that's the reason being here live has always a benefit. Let's get back to your question. First question: how come my cycle forecast only go out a couple of months, whereas yours seem to go out much further? So let's get to the first question. You can change the projection area, how much it should go into the future in the cycle analyzer by your own. So let me show you how you can adjust the projection period. I just need to clean up my chart here. So for example, you want to go this projection line or the forecast even more into the future, right? That's the question. So, and maybe I have used the larger forecast period. You can change this in the settings area. Just move to the settings panel. And when you're in the settings panel, go to the post-processing session. And there you will find a way to forecast plot forward in bars or data points used on the chart. This is the standard setting. So as a standard setting, it will always plot 150 data points. So depending on the time frame you're using into the future. And you can now change this. So if you want to have more plot into the future, just increase the number, update the data, and now you will see that the composite forecast, even here on my chart, goes much, much more into the future. So this is how you can even ensure that your forecasts go out much further. So this is the first question. Second, is there somewhere to download more tickers? Seems very limited. Yeah, so that's also a good question for new starters, as we don't provide our own data, but we provide wrappers to access more or less freely available data sets. And as I've shown you here, ways to access, for example, oil futures data, like I did today, this is the simple way how you can add every ticker which is available on Yahoo Finance. So just move over to Yahoo Finance. You can use the search engine there, and then you will always find the ticker ID, which is shown on Yahoo Finance. And we have ensured that you can just use the ticker ID from Yahoo Finance, add it here, as I just did, into the cycle scanner, like here. And then just add the same ending, JFA, so that this is knowing that the data is coming from this data source, so then it can correctly map the ID with the data set in the back. So that's the way you can upload or you can analyze any data which seems to be available via Yahoo Finance, and we will ensure that we sync to the same data set. So you're not limited, even if our template just starts with, I think, 5 to 10 basic tickers. You have access to a very, very, very large assets which are already available there. And for sure, if this is not enough, you can upload your own data always, Charles. But I hope this gives you a starting point to extend your own analysis, right? So let's check some other questions. And I promised there have been questions on gold upfront to the session. So I'm reading the chat before starting the live stream. Yes. And you asked about gold. So just quickly, to not overuse the time for today, but quickly, for sure, let's have a quick look on cycles in gold. Same procedure. We open up our cycle scanner. Let me just clean up from the screen first. This is gold, right? So, and Charles, back to your question, this is just done by using the ID where you can pull up the gold futures contract from Yahoo Finance daily data. But let's start with the fresh analysis. This is just using the current last 3 years. This is what I recommend to as a starter. And you can see a nice clear peak in the spectrum, which is seen here at 220 trading days. So this is the most important cyclic peak to go. And if you just cross-check, this is the current rhythm, which also can be seen in this data set. And just having very quick analysis, it looks like that in February or this point in time, we are approaching an at least interim top in the gold prices, which is then moving down into summer. I mean, for sure, you need to check the longer term cycle on the weekly like I did in oil and gas, but I will leave it up to you to cross-check what's the longer term cycle. At least the daily cycle seems to top. And if you add 2 or 3 cycles into the mix, so I'm also adding the cycle with a length of 107, which looks like interesting from the spectrum, and the longer one is 360. So it's a similar picture. So looking like to have a topping period here and then into late summer, maybe dropping. That's just a very, very quick and rough analysis on gold. Okay. So okay. Yeah, for sure, William. I wanted to look at natural gas. I was going to ask if you don't need to look on the spot price. For sure, you could also use other symbols on natural gas. I just like to use the spot price first, but you don't need to be limited to that. So please also use this. And it's even more interesting if you can find the same cycles in the spot price and in the symbol. It even gives you more confirmation that it seems to be a real cycle to track and to use. Otherwise, if you will find completely different set of cycles in this data set, then this is more an indication to not track and follow these cycles in natural gas. So please continue. You're right. You're not limited to the spot price. Daniel. Yeah. This is now the dependency in between cycles. So if oil prices go up, will this impact inflation and the way how the Fed reacts to this situation, and might this delay some S&P cycles? So this is now trying to interpret market behavior based on different cycles. I think this is out of the scope for this cycle analysis session. And Daniel, but I think this is now, once you have the cycles in oil, gas, global stock market, S&P, you get a picture. You get a picture what's happening in the energy sector. You get a picture how energy might impact inflation, and you know what reaction this might trigger from another perspective. So this is beyond pure cycle analysis, but if you can read the cycles, this might give you a clue on what short-term reactions you might see from the Fed impacting the S&P. I think not impacting the overall cycle, because you can't fight against a dominant cycle if it's there. You can influence by short-term movements or it's noise or random signals, and cycles can give you a clue how they interact, or at least once they are in alignment, they give you even more confirmation. If they are not contradicting, but if they might to interact between markets, that needs a lot of long-term knowledge. As said, yes, I agree in regards how to further analysis. I would be careful with making any indication, as we want to stick to the pure cycle analysis here. Hope you understand my response here. Real estate, good question, Peter. I will take this into account for another session, because therefore I need to think about which index and symbol to use. I will take a note of it and maybe get back to this. So have a look out in the introduction of future Cycles TV. Yeah, maybe Daniel. Okay, it's a good follow-up question. When I upload data, there is no monthly analysis available. Yeah, there is no monthly section. That's right. We need to adjust this, but I think it should not make any difference. So even if you select weekly from the drop-down when you upload, you should not have a problem in uploading this. So the reason is there's no monthly selection. We have just not focused on making this available. However, it should not impact the cycle analysis if you upload your data. Otherwise, please reach out to the support and we will ensure this. Okay. Maybe just checking your questions. Yeah, I think that's it for today. Let's leave it that way. So we are moving now to 40 minutes for today. So yeah, so I will take 2 topics from today's session into next account. So one is you're interested in real estate cycles, and second, and this question often shows up, a demonstration on intraday cycle analysis, how this works. So you can use the same tooling we have here on intraday data if you upload your own intraday data, because we are not an intraday data provider. But Robert, it's a good topic for one of the follow-up sessions to give you an example on that. So taking this into account for our next week's sessions, I hope you have been seeing some important cycles in the energy class we need to follow up mid this year. Otherwise, I wish you a very nice and happy week, and would like to see you here again, same place, same time, next Monday. Let's get back here to have some cycle analysis. Thanks for today. Have a nice evening.